You know, we tend to think about personality in these really simple terms, right? Like you're an introvert or an extrovert. But what if it's not some fixed label you're stuck with? In this explainer, we're going to dive into personality as this dynamic journey, a constant quest to build a stronger, more coherent version of yourself.
So let's just jump right in with maybe the biggest question there is. Who are you? I mean, who are you really? It seems so simple on the surface, but the answer, well, it's a lot more complex than you might think. Are you a fixed thing, or are you something else entirely?
Let's break this down a bit. On one hand, you could see yourself as a state. You know, what you are right now, something that feels pretty fixed, stable, and known. But there's this other, much more powerful idea, that you're actually a process. You're what you are constantly becoming. And this idea, this transformative process, is arguably the most important part of being human. Some would even say that this whole process of becoming is what consciousness is all about.
To really get a grip on this idea of becoming, we can't just start with modern science. We have to look back, way back. Long before psychology was even a thing, humanity was already using these incredible ancient maps, mythology, and religion to navigate the huge complexities of life and personal transformation.
Just look at this timeline for a second. It's kind of mind-blowing. Modern humans have been around for about 350,000 years, and our oldest maps, these shamanic traditions, are probably just as old. Now, compare that to modern psychology, which is only about 150 years old. It's a pretty powerful reminder that maybe, just maybe, not everything we need to know has been discovered in the last century and a half.
So what's really fascinating is that when you look at all of these ancient maps, you start to see a core pattern emerge. Over and over again, across totally different cultures and times, you see this idea of a psychological death and rebirth. It's this powerful notion that a breakdown, a falling apart, is actually a necessary first step to building yourself back up, but stronger.
And this pattern usually unfolds in 4 basic steps. First, there's the descent into the underworld, into chaos. You know that feeling when things just fall apart? Second, you have to confront the problem head-on. Third, you start to reconstitute yourself, to pull those pieces back together in a new way. And finally, you ascend, but you're stronger and wiser than you were before. This is the basic blueprint for any meaningful change. Okay, so let's fast forward to the modern era and see how this all connects. If the ancients gave us these massive, sweeping maps, then modern psychology gives us a different set of tools. Think of it like a compass, or maybe a GPS. These different schools of thought aren't really competing truths. They're just different ways of looking at the exact same territory, the human mind.
And we've got a lot of tools in this toolbox. There's the psychoanalytic view, digging into the unconscious mind. The humanist school, which is all about personal growth. The existentialists, who wrestle with the big, scary questions of life and death. The biological approach, looking at our genes. And then there's the psychometric school, which tries to measure the whole shebang. Each one gives us a totally unique lens. Take the existentialists, for example. They offer this really profound, maybe even a little jarring perspective. They argue that suffering isn't just some accident, some deviation from a healthy life that happens because of trauma. No, they say it's baked into the very fabric of our existence, for the simple reason that we are aware that we're going to die.
Now let's pivot to a completely different tool, the psychometric approach. This is the science of measurement, and when it tries to pin down and quantify personality, well, it has led to some of the most brutal and controversial findings in all of psychology. Take a look at this number, 83. On its own, it doesn't mean a thing, but in the context of psychometric research, it represents a pretty difficult reality. So after decades and decades of testing millions of people, the U.S. Armed Forces came to a stark conclusion. They found that about 10% of the population, specifically those with an IQ below 83, couldn't be trained for any role in the military without being counterproductive. Now, this is a really tough finding to grapple with because it suggests that our traits can create real-world limits. It challenges our deep-seated ideas about limitless potential. It's a perfect example of how the scientific study of personality doesn't always tell us what we want to hear.
So, we've got these ancient maps and we've got these modern tools. What on earth are we supposed to do with all this? Well, the final and most important step is all about integration. It's about using all this knowledge not just to understand yourself, but to actively transform yourself.
Let me give you an analogy that makes this super clear. Imagine your old, beat-up car finally dies on the highway while you're driving to a job you absolutely hate. Now, what is that thing you're sitting in? Is it still a car? The answer is not really. A car is a tool that gets you places. When it stops doing that, it's not a car anymore.
It dissolves into what you could call a nest of snakes, a chaotic, tangled mess of all the problems it suddenly represents. Your money problems, your terrible job, your lack of planning. It's a sudden, involuntary plunge into the underworld.
And this perfectly illustrates the two ways we can face chaos in life. When it's thrown at you against your will, like the car breaking down, your body goes into threat response. You feel fear, you shrink, you freeze up. But, and this is the amazing part, if you encounter that same stressor voluntarily, at a time and place of your choosing, your entire system reacts differently. Your mind and body see it as a challenge, as an opportunity for growth.
This all leads to an incredibly useful piece of wisdom. We're wired to see problems, dragons, as just things to be avoided. But if you can flip that perspective, you start to realize that inside every single one of those dragons, every problem you face, there's a treasure waiting for you to find it.
And that right there is the ultimate goal. The whole point of this entire journey, from ancient myths to modern psychology, is to learn how to voluntarily confront the dragons in your own life, to face the chaos, claim the treasure inside, and use those lessons to build a stronger, more coherent, and more resilient you.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Just take a second and think about your own life. What is the biggest challenge you're currently avoiding? The one thing that seems the most intimidating, the most terrifying. Because that is your dragon. And if you can just find the courage to face it, what incredible treasure might it be guarding?